think we can call the meeting to order. This is the February 20th, 2024 meeting of the Southampton Town Landmarks and Historic Districts Board. Present, we have Stephanie Davis, Bill Hine, Barbara Roberts, Jeff Gibbons, Susan Sherry Clark, Tim Ganettis, Vicki Kahn, and Martha Green, and myself, Ed Wisnowski. And a quorum is present. This meeting is being conducted under town and New York State law providing for in-person and remote participation. Individuals may undertake remote participation by activating Zoom links found on the published agenda and at the town clerk's agenda and meeting portal on the town website. Viewing only is done by activating the live link at the top of the town clerk's portal page. The online Zoom participation is being moderated by Kevin of CTV. For remote comment on a particular item, please notify CTV via the chat or raise hand function relative to an agenda item so that comment can be made. To reduce wait times for online and in-person participants, our practice is to advance such items on our meeting agenda if we are notified of agenda items of interest. Commentators will need to provide name, agency of relevant and place of residence or business. With that, I think we can proceed to the first and most immediate item on the agenda, and that is the approval of the minutes for January 16th, 2024. The minutes, draft minutes, were circulated. There was a little tweak on 13 Ochre Lane.
13 Ochre Lane, correct.
And I think we clarified the issue of Zoom designation for participation and in-person participation for the board and for maintenance of a quorum. And just as a point of reminder, a legal meeting for the Landmarks Board requires an in-person quorum. Remote participants who may be there do not count for the purpose of a quorum. So it is also therefore of interest that members give advance notice if they expect to be absent for a meeting. So far it has never been a problem. So I think I remember from my childhood school days that your class gets some gold stars for everybody showing up. So,
Thank you, Ed.
That's right.
okay, we have a couple of priority items to consider because of the presence of representatives, and what we'll do is take up 97 School Street first, and then 70 Dune Road, the Tiana Life Saving Station Certificate of Appropriateness, and 2385 signage for the historic district in Bridgehampton, because that's of interest, I think, to some of also those present. So if there's no problem, then we'll proceed that, and then we'll go to the regular order of the agenda. So 97 School Street, and we have had the work of Martha to review this referral, which involves the installation of solar panels on a building in Bridgehampton. Let me see if I can first show its physical location in geographic terms for everyone to get a sense of where this is. This building in the parking lot is the building at issue. This is Montauk Highway, School Street, where the community house is located at the intersection. And it's really at the point now of a major intersection with stoplights of annoying operation. This is the building where the solar panels would be located. As you can see, there's a parking lot and what might be euphemistically called the back alley of Bridgehampton. Martha did some imaging, and would you like to, that's the wrong report.
Well, this is Round Swamp, which is
You need to,
beg your pardon, I don't like this. This is Round Swamp, which is a food store with a flat upstairs. And it's open seasonally, so it's not open right now. The building says circa 1955. They want to put solar panels on both the east and the west side. The west side is visible from School Street, not from Main Street. And although I didn't feel we could object, it would be better if they weren't on the west side, because it is very visible. But I don't know if that gives them enough of enough paneling to do its job. I don't know anything about solar paneling, never mind enough. It is on the parking lot, so it's not going to ruin anyone's view. And I guess that's all I could say about it. Sorry about my finger in front of that picture. But yeah, it's a nice little building. It's not old. It doesn't really fall under our jurisdiction. It's not historically important. But it is unsightly what they want to do. And so that's
just to clarify something, it is under our jurisdiction.
because,
It's in the historic district,
even though it's not on the main street.
even though it's not on the main street.
Thank you for
It's,
clarifying that.
Yeah, and
So therefore, it is under our jurisdiction.
yes, and that's one of the reasons for the referral from the planning board to get a feel for whether or not, there would be a problem with it. You did not find a problem with it.
Well, it's not attractive, I don't know, but it is nice that they want to lessen their environmental footprint. It would be better if they could just put them on the east side of the roof rather than on both sides, but I don't know if that will do the job for them.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't think we should have a problem with it. We often discuss this about solar panels. It comes up all the time, and we don't have a policy for it, so I didn't see a problem with it.
This is not an application for a certificate of appropriateness yet,
No.
which is when a more formal decision would be required for us to look at, But, so, I myself also did some looking at this building. When you look at the various elevations, you don't get too much of an impression of them. This is looking from the driveway, that back alley area going into the parking lot. That's kind of what you would see. And for the most part, it looks like the panels are very close to the roof in terms of being elevated off. They're not tremendously elevated off. This is their sketch versus looking at the building from the parking lot area. The parking lot is relatively active in the summertime, but look at these pictures, you know, nobody's there in the winter to be looking at it. This is the west elevation that you talked about that sits behind a restaurant building and is not really readily available. In fact, you can't get a straight-on picture because of the other buildings in front of it.
Well, you can't get a straight-on picture, but it is really wide between the Candy Kitchen and the Greek restaurant that it's sitting in front of. So you can absolutely see it from the community house. You get a
Well,
real
this is,
clear
yeah, this
view
is the way,
from
if you,
across the
right,
street.
if you look at this picture here, this is the kind of picture, you do get it, of it, and it's also obscured by the tree foliage in terms of
Yeah.
what's in front of it.
It's a
This is
deceptive
this
picture.
is the vision of other buildings on Main Street in the back that this building works with. As I said, there is that picture. And going down School Street, the next property next to it is 97 School Street. And this house is also in the historic district, and this is the driveway. And you can't see, basically, a little sliver of the tip of the roof that's there, so there's not much exposure there. Otherwise, it's all hedged off with landscape specimens. So my sense is that they're, you know, not a great concern for what they're doing, and if it came down to the point of, you know, future decision on a certificate of appropriateness, should they go forward with this project, I would not have a great objection in terms of the certificate of appropriateness. And Martha rightfully points out that we've been dealing with the solar panel installation on a number of properties, some of which were not of landmark status, but, you know, just for the fact that they are in significant visual places along some of our hamlet areas. So my sense is that, you know, if we send a response back that we have minimal concern about this, does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
I would just say, looking forward, that we might start, you know, looking at what alternatives. This is the first of many. I saw, I think, in the last couple weeks, a picture in the Southampton Press with Sag Harbor had the Tesla. It was a house with the Tesla shingles.
Tesla shingle roof, yeah.
But it didn't give an address. I would like to see them.
They
if
have
any-
their, they have their own issues.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
But there's actually one that's been built and they're installed, but I'd like to
I've
see.
seen this, I've seen the samples.
Yeah.
There's a lot of just brake metal. So what's not solar is like a wood textured piece of metal, and they look a little fake.
And the photo I saw, you couldn't
Right.
it was just blackish looking, but if anyone comes up with an address and
You know how,
circulates
you know
it
how
even.
everyone here loves the black metal roofs.
Yeah, so we'll, but I'm just saying, at some point, there's going to be one that's gonna come up, we're gonna need, come up with, a
policy.
creative
I
solution.
think that, I mean, one of the things to consider is, I mean, in this case especially, is that this is a commercial building
Sure,
versus a residential,
sure,
and it doesn't, I mean, it is under our purview because it's a part of the
Sure.
historic district, that's not a contributing thing. If it was a contributing building, I would have a lot more concerns, but since it's not.
I agree.
Barbara, were you going to say something?
I'm sorry?
Were you,
No, I was just agreeing. I had also looked at this building, so I'm agreeing with the conversation. But I also am very aware of the Sag Harbor building, so I was agreeing with Susan. Thank you.
okay, very good. So that'll be our response. Did you have anything that you wanted to say about this?
That covers all my questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, very good. Okay. Let's go on to 70 Dune Road. And Matt, would you want to present?
Present anything?
Basically explain what the interest and, I have, I've been there, but a lot of people are unfamiliar a little bit with the background and history, and it's a chance for catching up a little bit.
Okay, so I'm Matt Joseph from McLean Associates. This is the Tiana Life Saving Station. It's the old Neptunes, and the CPF department is restoring the building. So we have a COA for what you see there, which is the 2018-2019 restoration. And the continuation of that is going to be the restoration of the Neptune's deck with guardrails similar to what's in that photo. We also are redeveloping the site to have parking on the west side like there used to be with Neptune's. That structure has been removed. It's proposed to be rebuilt in a somewhat similar fashion with the roof and columns, but just not the lower bar area. No teal green paint, just natural wood finish.
What was the function of that?
That right there
Yeah.
was the upper bar of Neptune's Beach Club.
Yep.
So there's a tremendous deck in the back that had
Been there.
a main bar and that upper bar. And the town board had decided that, since there's so much real estate with that deck, rather than remove the deck, they would like to actually restore the deck. So we're restoring sort of in kind. There's Trex decking that's there now. But when the 2018 project was done, part of the building was demolished. There was, not original to the life-saving station, there was a addition that had the bathrooms and that sort of stuff. That had been removed. But when that was removed, that decking was replaced with a tropical hardwood Ipe decking. So the proposed plan is to redeck the rest of it with Ipe and a guardrail similar to, well, the same exact guardrail as that. That's from the 2018 project. Around the perimeter of the deck would be a mahogany square lattice, like you see in the lower picture. And once the project is done, it'll be a museum on the first floor and then CPF offices on the second floor. So pretty much, building-wise, there's really no change to the building, and that has the COA from 2018 or 19. And this is really just the site plan. We're doing passive revegetation on the eastern side. There's going to be a from the parking lot on the west side, a stone path that goes to the front of the building where the Circassian anchor will be on display, and then a timber step up to the front of the building. In the back, in that general area, there'll be a handicapped accessible ramp up to the back deck. There'll be minimal site lighting. I think there's 3 light fixtures proposed for the site.
Some of us think the Circassian anchor belongs in Bridgehampton.
Well, this was a,
Why is that?
Where in Bridgehampton?
so this seemed like a decent spot for it because it's a life-saving station. And
Huh.
And the men of the crew of the Tiana Life Saving Station were on hand at the Meacock Station when this was happening. It was a 3-week ordeal with the Circassian tragedy, so all the lifesavers participated in it.
Nice triad.
Well spoken. Okay. Any further kinds of questions that are there? How many have been to the Tiana? So we have a substantial number of people familiar with the layout and the issues involved. Is there, I didn't prepare a resolution, but if there is a motion to proceed to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the application as presented?
I so move.
It's moved by Stephanie, seconded by Barbara. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say, or raise your hand.
Aye.
It is unanimous.
thank you.
No.
So anybody that wants a tour during construction, we can arrange a tour. So if you want to see the site.
Especially because the interior, the boat room is kind of
Oh, that's
I
cool.
would love to see that.
I'd like
Yeah.
to see that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that takes care of 70 Dune Road. And as a matter of particular interest with respect to the question of signage, we have a certificate of appropriateness, so to speak, referral for signage on a property in Bridgehampton. This is the property here. Let me see if I can get my. You saw the application picture that was presented, which was clearly dated because, and is problematic because the sign is already installed. So this is one aspect of this problem. If you want to call it sign malpractice or whatever, I don't know. The sign is already installed, even though there's no approval for it for the historic district. If you notice, there's another sign here, which was not part of the application, which also has been installed, a second sign, and that one, was not even relevant, and it's associated with a ribbon that has been put on the exterior of the building, this yellow ribbon underneath. Let me see if I can you see it there? Right here?
Yeah.
Which is another aspect of the question of sign malpractice. what I call for the moment sign malpractice. Not to mention there is street sign advertising also that's been put on the sidewalk as well. This is today's picture that I took. This is a gallery, Stella Flame gallery. Whoever designed the sign certainly didn't design it with respect to easy readability, which I think should be one of the principles for
Any sign.
evaluating signs. But at the moment, you know, that was done by the initiative. If go back, you can see that this is really, 2385 encompasses both this volume here on the left with a central glass atrium entrance and this volume on the right next to the famous candy kitchen. And it's all 2385. This is one side. We now look to the other side and we see those signs are pre-existing. I think they're unappealing in many aspects to them in terms of the colors and matching and different things, because there are two tenants with two different signs of different character associated with this particular building, or this part of this particular building. To complicate things a bit more, I shouldn't say complicate, but more problematic about this is the fact that this window for Waves advertises, it says closed for vacation for the season, see you early spring. Until then, visit us at, with advertising their website in the window. And this very big, taking up maybe 50% of part of that window space there. So all of this is stuff that kind of comes down, rains upon the character of the historic district in some ways, and eventually, you know, it's nothing that we can necessarily solve tonight, but has to be thought about and reflected about a little bit in terms of beginning to develop perspective. And I also, just as another point, I think one of the problems here is that these are buildings in which the space is rented to tenants, and the tenants self-initiate their own signage independent of landlord approval and landlord responsibility or landlord regulation. So that's why some of these, I think, represent signs that are, you know, personal individual choices of the particular tenant. The other aspect of Bridgehampton and other hamlets is that there is a fairly rapid turnover in storefronts, street level, retail outlets, so that signs get changed almost every season in substantial numbers as shops open and close or pop-ups for the community. So those are other aspects of, I think, dealing with signs that are there. Another issue came up today, not with respect to this question, but the Dime Bank headquarters in Hauppauge has its major building yet in Bridgehampton, 2200 Montauk Highway. And they proceeded to the Architectural Review Board to get approval for a new dime bank sign. There used to be a Bridgehampton National Bank sign there, which was taken down last year, but no replacement yet was made. Plus, they're going to put in tenant label signs because they're renting part of that office building, since it's no longer a headquarters for the bank system that's there. So there's a real jumble, if you will, administratively and programmatically for looking at signs and how they get reviewed. The planning board gets something, the architectural review board gets something, the landmarks board gets something, maybe. We don't have anything for the dime bank in place, so there's stuff that kind of needs to be worked out over a period of time, so that's just something I think we all should be aware of.
Yeah, Ed, I have a question. You mentioned that the tenants were self-initiating the designs for their signage. Do we know that for a fact?
No,
Because
that's my inference, that's not a fact.
Oh, I see,
yeah.
because most standard retail leases or office leases even require that the tenants actually have to have the landlord's approval, but all the signage has to conform to the local regulatory authorities. So whatever's in the town statutes right now should govern. The question is, what do they have in the statute that applies and is germane to this district?
A lot of it is size of the sign. Depending upon different boards involved, I don't think the planning board has any sense of what is a good sign or a bad sign. You know, is it a monumental sign? Is it a freestanding sign? Is it a facade sign? Those are the kinds of things, how it's bolted to the facade or how deep the monument posts are in the...
But there's no regulations, I'm sorry, because I should have looked this up myself. I didn't. Is there any reference to the amount of area, of windowed area that can be
There
covered,
is,
of surface
well, there
area,
is-
the maximum
there is-
dimensions?
Yeah, there is size concern, and one of the things that was associated with this sign of the Edward Jones was that I believe it was 28 square feet when it's supposed to be 24.4 square feet in size, and so that's why they asked for a variance, and that's why it got referred to the Landmarks Board. So we are kind of at the bottom of the pile of information and regulation.
And timing, because the sign is already there. But certainly, I mean, Edward Jones is a national franchise.
Right, yeah.
And their job is to make everybody happy. They don't care. As long as their sign goes up, they really don't care. You wanted 24 square feet? Fine, make it 24 square feet. I mean, that was totally within the building owner's purview.
Well, there's no decision yet. This
Okay.
is not a certificate of appropriateness discussion. This is a ZBA referral because it required a variance. It required a variance in the new historic district. And so it was referred to us for our reaction. And that referral is opening up what is the proverbial can of worms that,
Right.
you know, just kind of went through a little bit here.
For me, I think signage is incredibly important and has a huge aesthetic impact on on any commercial street. And for us, seeing as this is in a historic district now, I mean, I think it's our responsibility to see what we can do to make sure that we have some conformance with with whatever the regulations are that we would like to, that we have or would like to modify and put in place, because I think now is the time.
Yeah.
Signage is going to be important, I agree, and there's, as I mentioned, I think the frequency which I have seen, mostly facade signs, change in Bridgehampton. It's been very frequent and very dramatic juxtapositions of different types of signs in terms of their appearance right next to each other on a building facade.
I was just gonna say, I mean, of course, you can see a lot more black. I think it looks larger than it needs to be, just the back, and not the lettering, but the background. But it's not centered, so that, I would never notice, except I'm looking at a photograph, that really throws me off, that it's not centered with anything. It just sort of
It's tacked up on there.
got put up there somehow. It's very odd. In fact, it's way too close to the Candy Kitchen
Yeah.
sign. But that's,
Well, it's installed already, so, I mean.
Yeah.
oh, right, but I'm just saying since the Candy Kitchen gets shown in all the historic, every time they mention the historic district, they often picture the Candy Kitchen, of course, or use that picture, but it's a little jumbled in there.
And of course, the Candy Kitchen has a backlit sign too.
And make it the
appropriate size.
Well, I,
That's
That's the
historic.
question, right?
Anything
said that is
but
our
that
responsibility.
particular,
well, I think we would have to have a better justification. This is not the certificate of appropriateness kind of discussion, but there is an underlying set of problems that are associated with this. One is that it's already installed without the variance and without a certificate of appropriateness.
See, that's
Right, no,
irrelevant.
I agree, I agree.
It's irrelevant.
So, I think in terms of communicating to the ZBA, we communicate on their issues and responsibilities. Their issue is variances, and the question pointing out that it's already installed, and let them deal first with whether they're giving a variance for the size of the sign.
Are
So,
they asking us, though, our opinion on the size of the sign?
in part that, yes, that would be part of our
What
concern,
is our opinion on that?
okay?
I think it's too large.
Too large.
it's too big.
It's definitely too
It's too-
large.
yeah.
Yes. And it's not, I mean, it's that kind of I mean, I don't know what material it is, whether it's metal or wood or some kind of composite there, but it's not unheard of to take down a sign and remake it. It's not impossible to do that.
It's
Right.
not a big deal.
So
Just
do
trim
I
it.
sense that we have some consensus that the sign is too big?
Yeah, it shouldn't get a variance.
It's bigger than the
Yeah.
height of the Candy Kitchen sign.
And it's too close to the Candy Kitchen. I
Right.
think
The
if not being
second-
centered is a good
Okay,
point.
then the second question relates to placement.
Yes.
Right.
So placement issues are proximity to the Candy Kitchen sign.
It's like,
Looks like they're centering it over the glass plate.
yeah,
And
The
they
window.
center it over the
Mhm.
door and the window.
right, the whole,
So that
the
it-
sign.
The
They go-
So
The
that, and that's
storefront
kind
per
of
se,
the
yeah.
question, Bill, you originally communicated about its alignment with the other features of the building. So, placement issue of alignment, window plus door reference point.
Cockeyed.
Okay, and if we want to,
Almost like they decided that they were gonna, we wanna hang on to the Candy
I
Kitchen
was
name.
gonna say, just so we
and-
can be
and-
in every picture.
Right, right,
Of the
we can
Candy
get that in
Kitchen.
there, because everybody knows the
Be
Candy
as
Kitchen.
close as we
And
can.
nobody knows this place next door that's gonna be gone next year,
yeah.
with its ugly sign that nobody
So-
can read.
Okay, now, it's, the question, other questions might be the relationship of the background color or background appearance. Is there a problem with having black background and white letters?
I don't think so. I think that my opinion is that each retailer, there are a lot of national and regional retailers, and retailers go to a great expense to develop a logo that's particular to their, identity. And I think it's important that, everyone can put up his own sign. I think what's more important is that the placement and the size has some kind of context in the design for the overall district and the street in particular.
So, but there's no problem with the color appearance
No.
of,
It can't be not our jurisdiction. I think, it's a ZBA matter what's most concerning to me is whether they follow the code or not. And the size seems to be the thing that we, at this stage, should be ruling against. I think there's a whole other issue if whether new code should be written for signs in the historic district, because we made this historic district. So I think there's another issue that we have to follow up of whether the current code is adequate.
well, just with respect to getting a feel or a sense about a couple of dimensions of signage, the color arrangement, the black background, white letters, is not a problem here.
No.
Okay. Is there a problem with the juxtaposition of typefaces that might be
No.
an issue?
No.
I
Okay.
think,
It's not our
I think that
jurisdiction.
these companies, as Vicky says, they have their identity, and I sort of like that it's not all uniform. It's not it's not an attractive building, so at least the signs give it a bit of individuality. So no, I do have a problem with Waves putting that big sign in the window, though. And this.
But that's a code enforcement issue. I'm
Yeah.
sure there
Yeah,
must
That-
be
they've
that-
something.
never been,
yeah,
they've
that's-
never been
yeah.
closed before. This is their first time closed,
I
so I
see.
would bet they didn't ask any permission. They
Yeah.
just,
Because
They
it's-
closed the door, they locked the door and left.
yeah, I think they've normally been open all year.
We have no right to do anything that's not in
Uh,
the code.
That is an issue down the road when we,
Yes.
when we get, but yes, there are a lot of other places on Main Street, Bridgehampton, which have signage in the window problems, but, you have to take small bites out of the bigger problem.
Well,
and-
Edward Jones is too large. It's not centered.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with it branding itself. I think they have a right to
Okay,
say that
and-
they're there.
the sign is unlit, and that's something we prefer?
Yeah.
Unlit sign, okay. And we'll leave the orange sign for another day, with respect to however that's going to be processed down the road, so. Do you have any thoughts on signage as town historian?
Yeah, there should be some sort of continuity with signage sizes. I don't think it should be free-for-all, but I do understand the branding, and Edward Jones, that's recognized at anywhere, so that's fine. I'm concerned about the stuff on the window. Is that actually a ribbon, Ed, or is that like,
Yeah.
is that like a vinyl decal? What,
Is it three-dimensional?
That's
ridiculous.
three, I mean,
I mean, is that for like freeing
But it
hostages?
looks like
I
it's
mean,
fake three-dimensional.
Not sure what that,
Almost like
that's
AI
all
or
about.
something.
And-
Put it in
And,
Photoshopped
you
in.
know, a sandwich board on Main Street, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
sorry, that's a hazard, especially in a snowy, because
Well,
you
I
have this bright sign.
I think I've blown it up as big as I can, so,
And the flow
It's a
is-
gallery. It's probably to do with their exhibition, but I could pop in and ask them.
It was a tribute to Ukraine.
It's the wrong yellow. Isn't it?
It's a little odd.
okay, so I think I will communicate back to the ZBA that we do have concerns over the installation prior to any variance approval, and any certificate of appropriateness, and that the size of the sign and the placement and alignment of the sign were of concern without expressing the particulars of those issues. So, okay, is that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, why would we not say that we need them to stay within the rules that are allowed? That they shouldn't get the variance?
Well, that kind of, we can say that too, because if we have a problem with the size of the sign, we can have a problem with the size of the sign even under the regulation that exists for signs, so, but,
You've answered my question.
yeah, okay. Okay, so, first of many sign discussions I'm sure we will be confronting down the road. So with that, I think we can proceed to looking at 91 Fanning Avenue demolition. And I did send out the report to you for this, indicating that this house, which had a 1931 build for it, was associated with a prominent person in town of Southampton government in the 1940s as a receiver of taxes, and eventually in the 1950s and 60s, I guess mostly 50s, as elected treasurer of Suffolk County. Was a charter member and a founder of the Hampton Bays Fire Department, school board president in Hampton Bays, veteran of World War II combat, founder of one of the veterans posts and organizations in Hampton Bays. A prominent civic leader as well, Chester Jacobs. And I did provide, some of the information on it in the report. In my pursuit of the report here, I was told that they weren't going to wait for review by the Landmarks Board, and they demolished the house without a review. In my conversation with the representative of the owner, he indicated that he was against it, and the owner was not going to listen to him, and went ahead with the construction, with the demolition. And that's the place that the house was located, at 91 Fanning Avenue. You can see that a remaining construction or demolition dumpster is there. I've found basically the process disturbing, again, because this is something that has happened in the past. And the report I made has some recommendations to it, and I wanted to hear if you have thoughts about those recommendations that were in the report. Let me just read them. That proposes that the Landmarks and Historic Districts Board find that the applicant impaired the ability of the Landmarks Board to evaluate the historic integrity and historic significance of properties being considered for demolition and alteration under town code, and to provide documentation about the same. And secondly, to request a determination by the chief building inspector of any violations pursuant to the town code where a demolition permit is required and where penalties for offenses under the code are mentioned, and to return a communication to the Landmarks Board about that. And recommend to the building department a denial for the demolition permit or other permit, which might involve construction of a new house there, but until the applicant mitigates or undertakes corrective action for impairing the Landmarks Board in the execution of its responsibilities. So, thoughts?
What can, I mean, they can't put the building back,
Yeah.
so we can only torture them for going forward, can't we? I mean, there's nothing, it is very aggravating. Is there anything that we can really,
Well, if there's a finding of violation, the town may pursue
Good.
suitable prosecution. This part of the code, I think, has a $1,000 fine as a maximum. I know other parts of the code, which we also fall under for our review issues, has a $1,000 fine for the first offense, and including the possibility of 6 months jail time for serious types of things. I don't think they've ever been used. I don't think there's ever been a violation looked into or prosecuted on behalf of the unpermitted activity of demolition or even construction for additions and so on for buildings that should be reviewed and have some attention given to them prior to the actions taking place. So hopefully this might be a first step in getting the attention of officials. One of the things that also sits behind this is that a report to SHPO on the application and enforcement of our historic preservation code is also possible. We do have to make an annual report, and that's coming up soon. We'll hope to draft it, but maybe by next meeting or 2 meetings down the road. But if the code for historic preservation is not being enforced, I think we all understand what happens. So historic districts have no meaning. Landmarks have no meaning in terms of their preservation by not necessarily the current generation of owners and occupants, but the future owners, if they're sold, who are or come into those buildings as novices or aliens, so to speak, to the historic dimensions of the building. So I think it's important if we try to get attention of the town bureaucracy to these issues.
But I think part of the issue may be, in fact, the lack of enforcement, and is that due to insufficient numbers or availability of inspectors? And that's a whole other issue that the town has to deal with, and certainly the pandemic did make life a lot more difficult for the town and getting people out into the field. Now we're back to, a 5-day work week. The building department was closed for a very long time on Wednesdays. So now everyone's back at work, but I don't know whether, this inability to enforce is impeding us in fulfilling our mission.
I think it was, that may be a small part of the problem. I remember back in 2017 when the town historian, I was in Pittsburgh and at a meeting, and emailed me a picture of a demolished house or house in the process of demolition on Butter Lane in Bridgehampton, which should have been reviewed. And the demolition was by a local developer, and the local developer, even one of the parties that he would contract for demolition purposes, admitted that, they don't ever want to apply for a permit. They just go ahead and do it. And the building department just doubles from, $100 to $200, the administrative fee for the late filing fee, so to speak. That's not good for preservation purposes. It really needs to change the culture of, I think, the whole approach to construction, demolition in the town, and it just takes some serious effort on the part of the town government to own up to the issue. And, we can call it to their attention. We have called it to their attention. As you know, I object to the use of legalization as a term, that we're supposed to legalize illegal activity.
Right.
So I would hope that the town bureaucracy would turn around and begin to look at things, to bring them more in line with its code and with the confidence of the public with respect to development out here. Well, with respect to these recommendations, is there a problem with them?
No.
If there's no problem, I would like a vote from the board to give this the emphasis that it might need further down the road in the process for conveying these and implementing these elsewhere in town government. So if there is a motion to approve the recommendation, it's moved by Martha to approve these recommendations, and a second by Vicky. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please raise your hand. Aye, thank you. It's carried, and we'll carry on with that cause. 47 Lynn Avenue, Hampton Bays, which is another demolition without an official permit that took place. We reviewed this house in April of last year for an addition or renovation. It's a house built 1940. It's not listed as a historic resource or And we received the application with subsequent images of, we demolished the house, we found the foundation was inferior in quality. They provided some photographic images of it and proceeded to demolish the house. This is the state of the house yesterday. Brand new foundation in place. Lots of lumpy liquid concrete in the driveway all over the place from the new foundation that was poured. Overlooks Shinnecock Bay, is part of a it's a second part of a second building on the property. There is another cottage very close to the street. I think this one had once been used as a rental property by the owners. I presumed that, they, once they had the construction equipment and crew there, that they went ahead with it. The demolition was undertaken basically as a substitute for the renovation of the house, to which we had no objection, and the house didn't have much of a history that could be detected at the time. So I recommend basically that we not object to the late application in this case. And secondly, we did have the chance to evaluate the property compared to the previous application, which had a warning on it when it was referred to us by the planning board relative to a subdivision, that this house explicitly requires, and the owner knew that from the representations of his agent, and still would not take that seriously. Here, I think the question was expediency on the part of the applicant with respect to having discovered that his attempt to renovate was going to be compromised by a foundation that could not take the work that was planned. But I was also thinking that we really need to have a kind of expedited consultation process for these places where change becomes something of an economic pressure on the applicant to get a decision. And so, requesting the building department to consider a policy and practice for notifications with respect to deviation from prior plans, which has kind of been, oh, well, they looked at it once before and it's not a problem. It's not a problem if we do something more radical in our activity here. So I don't know how you feel about these recommendations, but does that sound as a decent resolution of this late application?
Yes.
So, okay, well, I'll respond to the building department then with no objection, with the recommendation that we try to find a way to get better notifications and quicker for the applicants that they deal with. Okay, we come to 675 Flying Point Road, where Susan was enthusiastically received with Vicky by the owners and architect, I believe.
Yeah.
As it was.
Very much so.
And I just saw the compliments that they emailed after your visit, so just want people to know that that they were very glad to receive your visit and information and assessment of what's going on. So would you?
Yeah, so Vicki and I went, last Friday, and it's an interesting property because it's a Burnett property. And so whenever you have a Burnett property, there's history involved. This one is not a KRF, and it's not listed as a historic resource, and it's also not in the table at the end. And the AYB on it, the actual year built was 1935, but I had interviewed the former owner, James S. Buddy Burnett, I think like 2014, 2013, and Buddy told me that the house had actually been moved there from the property to the east from 691. So it's older. It's probably a circa 1800s house, but it was a wing of the boarding house at 691. And that property we'll probably be looking at one of these days because there's a subdivision going on there. But anyways, a wing was moved from 691 over, and that was the main volume that we looked at. However, there was an addition put on in 2001 on the west side. It actually looks like a separate little house when you're looking at that front picture. And that's where most of the work's being done. It's one thing, the proposed work is minor. It's right there. You can see that chimney. That's the circuit, that's the 2001 new addition. And they want to remove that chimney and put large windows on the first and second floor on that side. And then moving on to the center section there, they want to change that fenestration. They want to put windows, a different set of windows there right down on the first floor, those little windows. Then going around to the left, to the west side of that new addition, they want to add some windows and change the configuration there. And the one thing, even though the older section is 1800s, so we had the people who met us was the owner's representative, the architect, and also the builder. And Mark Riss, the builder, had worked on all of these different structures at one time. None of the windows, even in the older section, are original. Even the little quarter rounds are all replicas, because you see them elsewhere exactly the same, and he confirmed. So, when you're coming, and they also want to remove the shutters, which are not original, because they all match. So I guess because most of the work is to the rear and changing non-original windows, I didn't have any objection to it, and neither
I did not.
Vicki. So, but the thing with this property, and there was a lot of, we had snow, so we just literally walked, it had been cleared out, walked around the back and looked. But it's 3.2 acres, so there are additional buildings that we were not looking at. But one, you can look at the first one to the right is, that was considered AYB is 1990 on it. I think there had been a garage there, but that's the garage, the pool house. The next one is a 5-car garage. Then there are 2 cottages straight in a line, and they were part of a property that they annexed from, they bought from the property next door, but they demolished them. Those AYBs are 2008, 2009 on those. But the one of interest, if you look, you can see the barn, and that is, there was a former Burnett barn there. And this is from what Mark said and reading different places, and it was deconstructed around 2010, 2011, and a reimagined barn was constructed on the same footprint, using whatever salvage materials they could use from the Burnett barn, but also even further reading today, materials also came from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland, beams, siding, but they tried to reuse whatever they have in some type of an art, it's a gathering space that, well, the former owner used. But we didn't make it that far. We stuck right to the house that we went to look at. But it is an interesting piece of history from the Burnett family. And now we are pretty well confirmed that there is nothing original left on the property, except for some of the interior beams and maybe some of the siding. And I heard I think the builder said there was an old pump up near the barn, but
Right.
besides that, I think that's pretty much. But the other reason that this property, and I'm glad that we got to see it, is because Lot Burnett, which was original settler Thomas Burnett's son, this is supposedly, according to Buddy, and from what I read, is the location of the original Burnett homestead. But that would have been 17th century, and there was nothing visible left of that. Mark had been in the basement and said there were two types of foundations, but they were both cement. He saw no stone rubble or anything left over.
Not
But-
worthy of an
Pardon?
not worthy of an archaeological dig.
No, so but I think, particularly since it was moved in 1935, we could assume that there was a new foundation installed at that time, even if there had been an older foundation there. And then you add the renovations in 2001, the 1800 section was totally renovated inside and out, that there's just not much left. The one thing that's interesting, if you see the white farmhouse to the right, that is where the wing would have come from, and that's 691, and that's one house as part of a subdivision that we may be revisiting again at some point. But it was, we were well accommodated.
Right, you might want to mention those nice 5 linden trees and the history
Oh,
about that.
yeah, that was the
because
other thing, thank you.
Julie probably is aware of that.
So
too.
that was the other thing. So we had the pump, some beams, and the 5 at the linden trees that came from the Louis Philippe. The wreck was 1842, and I think from what Ed said, that everybody claims to have had. But this claim comes from Buddy himself, that I guess he had even told the builder how proud he was of the linden trees. And in the real estate write-up, they mentioned a captain. And I'm guessing it was Luther that probably Luther Burnett would have been approximately the age. And they did refer to him as a captain, even though he was not a captain. I think it was more of a local term of respect for him.
Well, sometimes people who had other responsibilities with respect to maritime activity.
Yeah.
Given that title, I know
Yeah.
that salvage masters for the coastal area who were appointed by the government
Yeah.
acquired that title, for
Yeah.
example, even
And-
though they did not sail on a ship.
And Nelson Burnett was referred to as a captain, but I did, and I added it in the, I did the overview, of course, I did that one, of course, to show you what we were doing, and then went back through, it was the history from 593, well, a conglomeration of different histories I did, but I also added the Louis Philippe, there was a nice handout at the end that explained from the Maritime Museum about it. And I guess there's some shipwreck roses. A lot of people supposedly are still growing in the area along with elm and linden. And I added the obituaries for both Luther
Where are
and
the trees?
James Burnett.
Show us the trees, point to the trees.
I'm pretty sure it's those, they said those three right there
Right there,
toward
yeah.
the rear.
Okay.
And there's two in
And
the
my
front.
guess is the three right
And two
up
on
toward the,
the
in the
Yes.
front.
Exactly.
And that's why, right near the road, yeah.
So,
So-
okay, so you
So
could see them
it's
if you
my
drove by.
guess that that's how you know that there was some type of a house there, because that's, in 1842, they were planting, they wouldn't have planted the trees on farmland, they would have put them. But those three right to the rear, and then
The two in the front.
somebody did a site plan and they called these elms and cherries and other things, but you can see the two larger ones, which is hard to, it's really hard to photograph that house during the summertime because those trees come in pretty thick.
They said that the roses, the shipwreck roses are mostly in East Hampton.
Okay,
Because when they were unloading and throwing all the shrubs and everything off the ship, the roses ended up further east.
okay.
Broadweight or however
Okay.
the tide took them.
Well, I've heard East Hampton, I think, got the elms, but they were,
Stayed closer to Mecox.
okay. The elms, I heard, were destroyed during the hurricane of 1938. But it would make sense because the Burnett were baymen. I mean, they made their living off the bay. So if there was a wreck, even if they weren't formally there in the life, as life, the life saving station, they would, I'm sure, would have been right down there on the water because they owned all the property down to Flying Point, to the ocean was all there. Hundreds of acres. So anyways,
Okay.
this
Would you-
is a non-contributing, not a historic resource, but it was of interest.
Okay. And thanks for the effort and the very wide context for looking at the property.
Yeah, well, that's it,
Yeah.
it was
And-
really, the homeowner and the their representatives and the builder, everybody was the architect, very accommodating. We appreciated their time on that
And you were
snowy
very,
day.
and you were very diligent too, so,
Yeah.
very good. Would you do the response for that?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to referrals. 66 Lewis Road was prepared by Stephanie
Yes,
and filed.
yeah, I circulated a copy, received several okays, and because the hearing for this was scheduled for the 8th of February, which is before tonight's meeting, the planner had requested getting feedback for that meeting, so that's why it was filed.
Okay. 2297 Montauk Highway had a similar situation, a referral with a quick turnaround for a meeting. I did a recap of the information from the ZBA referral for the planning board referral, using basically the same information, and that was filed appropriately. The status of 2297 is that they will await a new plan from the applicant for the structure of the building that we considered, among other things, inappropriate for the location and for the historic district in Bridgehampton. Okay, so that's acknowledged. We had a referral from the planning board for 204 Butter Lane, Bridgehampton, relative to a site plan application. This is basically planned for becoming, or is now, an equinox exercise facility. Originally, this building was probably built about 1909, 1911 or so. I've forgotten. It was a potato processing facility for a number of farmers. One of the earliest farmers, I thought owned it. I'm not perfectly sure, but his name was J. Colford McGee. The McGees were big farmers in Watermill on Deerfield Road. Had extensive land. The father was John McGee, and became very prominent and large farmer in the late 1800s. And his sons Raymond McGee and Colford McGee were active in farming in Bridgehampton, as well as being businessmen and civic leaders. Raymond McGee, among other things, rearranged Bridgehampton's Main Street, the historic district that we talk about, has a lot of his fingerprints on it, where the commercial side of the north side of Montauk Highway is located, close to from Corwith Avenue, going eastward. He picked up and moved the Presbyterian mansion, old Presbyterian manse, that was located a couple hundred feet away, and put it right on Main Street. I should say he picked up a house he had right on Main Street, moved it to Sagaponack, close to Town Line Road, and in its place he basically put the Presbyterian manse, which was being replaced by a new facility, as a storefront on Main Street. And then eventually he went out and built some other stores alongside that as well. So I refer to it as the McGee Block in Bridgehampton. Basically that took place 1920 to 1930 or so as the time period. This building, anyway, is let me get the perspective. Was a potato processing facility because the railroad was right, and the railroad depot was right next door, so to speak. It was not alone. Let me go smaller here, just to produce a better picture here, get rid of some of the numbers. This is the building we're talking about on Butter Lane, 204. But here is another potato processing house that was of another Irish farmer named Nayland. Another farmer owned this building here, potato processing, by the name of Baldwin in Bridgehampton. You can go further down Butter Lane, and there is even more potato processing storehouses, warehouses, and grading facilities that were used by farmers from all the great farmland that was once open there, to be processed and then loaded right onto the train for the urban markets in New York City. So it was quite a concentrated enterprise. Obviously, there's no potatoes being shipped by train anymore. This facility, after it was decommissioned, in the 50s, I remember a farmer named Finberg who owned it and did some processing. I think it fell into disuse after that. It was bought up back around 2000 and became an exclusive wine club facility for storing wines and for people with deep pockets to enjoy kind of wine experiences at this facility. And then it went into another business. I think it changed owners, and then now,
I think it was
who was it?
automobiles, I think was fancy cars.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
I
there was
do,
some-
yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't keep track of all the comings and goings in Bridgehampton are a dynamic place, as we referenced earlier. So now it's to be the Equinox facility. Probably the biggest concern, and I'm sure the planning board, it's the planning board's issue, is this is a area without parking. And probably the question is, you know, what kind of use would it get? Just as a point of reference, we talked about the illegal demo of a house a few minutes ago. This is the place at which it was once located, and it has now become something of a processing facility. This is a little bit dated photograph. This other potato processing facility, which is utilized also as an exercise business, has rented this area here for parking. The place tends to be messy in character with respect to cars parking all along the sides of the roads. I don't know if Martha has ever sensed that, but the parking is
there
rather
isn't
congested
really.
there.
Yeah, it is the Equinox gym now.
Yeah.
And then there was the water park much long ago further out. There isn't really parking, but I haven't noticed it being particularly crowded, I have to be honest.
I have, my kids used to go to the Hayground camp, so in the summers, just trying to pull out of the camp onto Butter was nearly impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was so many cars parked that you had to pull out to see, and, yeah, it was really bad.
Of note is that these facilities, some of which I have identified, I didn't identify all of them, but as you can see, this is, you know, this is the railroad track here. This was identified in AKRF as a potential historic district. Bridgehampton Industrial Historic District, because of these early 20th century buildings that were used as part of the local economy, predominantly agricultural use, but associated with the rail yard. This also used to be the lumber yard, and potato processing took place there. Coal would come in here. This is the remnants of, let's see, where are the remnants of the GLF building, the Agway building? Here, right along here. This is the place where fertilizer and agricultural equipment would be unloaded from the train back in the 1950s and well, before the 1950s for farmers there. So a lot of these buildings are sprinkled in this area, and that's why AKRF articulated this Bridgehampton Historical, Industrial Historical District, and this is one of those buildings that's there. So my sense is there is no basis for any kind of objection. The building has been renovated and it doesn't look like a potato barn anymore, inside or outside.
This is the same area where Farrell tore down all those barns to put up that storage, so this is, I mean, at least they've left the building there. It looks
Yeah.
quite nice. They've done a nice job on the outside.
I think it's been kept up well and been, maintained well by the chain of ownership that has been there, so that's something that, my sense is not to object, compliment the ownership for maintaining the building, identifying it as a historic resource, reflecting the value of the agricultural economy, and leave the planning board to the rest of its duties with respect to the property. So, okay. So 204, that takes us to questions of the pending landmark questions. I don't know if there is any updates do we have?
I just wanted to mention 126 South Country Road in Remsenburg. You had uncovered some maps that needed to get included in the report, and also some information concerning one of what we suspect was one of the former owners and his involvement in the American Revolution. I think our last conversation, you were still doing some research using census records, so although I circulated an updated report and a revised resolution, Ed still wants to do a little bit more research to, see if we can complete fleshing out the history of this property. So we're going to hold this off until our March meeting.
Okay.
And there's nothing new to report on 11 Walnut Avenue and 149 South Country Road, so, okay. I think we've talked about the Bridgehampton Historic District enough so that we can take it off the agenda we'll be talking about it in other places, so we don't need it as a space taker on the agenda items. Nothing on town-owned cemeteries. Nothing on, there's turned out to be a very busy month, and I don't have anything yet to stimulate the question of the National Register of Historic Places nomination, but I hope to get to that pretty soon. Stony Brook Southampton Historic Buildings, we are losing one of the major arm twisters on putting pressure on the Stony Brook administration with the retirement of Assemblyman Fred Thiel, who has been extremely supportive and encouraging with respect to trying to maintain the historic structures on the campus as one part of its future. And with him disappearing, this will be his last year in the assembly, and one of his levers is the budget process for the State University of New York, and trying to put his finger on the scale there to tip it in favor of the causes that he wants for the Southampton campus. I will say that Stony Brook has its own fingers to put on the scale as well. So, but in his absence, it probably will fall to us to be more attentive and focused on what goes on the Stony Brook campus with respect to the fate of those buildings, given the fact that he will be retiring. Certified local government activity, which you have some thoughts about, Vicki?
Well, yes, we have, hopefully we'll get a, participate in a call sometime next month with SHPO to discuss the grants that will be available to us. And so I think it's incumbent on everyone on the board to think about what our priorities are and what we'd really like to push for, whether it's training or updating our survey or, you know, I don't know, until we have this conversation with SHPO, I don't know exactly what the parameters will be, which grants will be available. I'm sort of talking in a vacuum here. But Linda Mackey has us in her sites, and she will send out another e-blast with what's available. And then, yeah.
Okay, thanks. And since you're there, you are, you have
The landmarks-
volunteered to take.
The landmarks maintenance?
Yes.
Yes, and I spoke with Jackie again today, and I think I copied you on the email, gave her yet another copy. I said, just, you know, the press release for the maintenance program, we'd really like to get it out. And if Maria could just please let us know, if the supervisor could kindly let us know if she has any edits to that. We're happy to make them, otherwise we'd like to take it and, you know, move it on. So Jackie will definitely stay after her. She's out of town apparently this week, Maria, so.
Okay, well, thanks. Vicki volunteered to shepherd the
I'd like to
activity of the
volunteer.
landmark maintenance grant, and thank you for that. That helps certainly make things happen. So. And one of the problems, there's been such a turnover in the town board that a lot of this stuff is not familiar. If you were to mention the Landmarks Maintenance Award, you have to go back and dig in the archives to provide the context for them to understand what it's about and where the whole process has been over the last 10 years or so. So,
It was very helpful that you
oh well.
gave that printout of the legislation so that she'd have it for quick reference.
Right. Well, thank you for doing that. That's very much appreciated. One update from me, at our last meeting, we had a discussion of 520 Montauk Highway, Shinnecock Hills, with the presence of an Atterbury house and the possible move of it and the possible preservation of it. I've had several communications with people that involve involve some elaboration of the issues involved with the Peconic Land Trust and the neighbors, and it's not a simple task. It has to be looked at a bit more closely in terms of what's involved, and it will require some communication and communication of a more diplomatic sort than possibly has been taking place previously among the parties of interest for this house. So I just want to let you know that at the moment it's not on a fast track for business to be taken up, that the individual parties involved will probably be discussing things in a longer term fashion to see what's possible. There are complications, and that they need to be looked at more carefully.
I hope they don't give up. It's a beautiful house. I hope they don't give up. It is a good thing to do.
In any case, are there other things that we should be aware of tonight from? Yeah?
Just it's quick, I did send out the 2023 demolition list, the construction list, and I've tweaked those a couple times. And, the recommendations, and then also that summary. And the one thing I wanted to say with the summary is the site visits that you wanted. That's the 45 site visits that we made were per property, but a lot of them had 2 people, so I didn't know how you wanted those counted. So you can let me know for the next year if you want.
Well, we have to have some, I think, some record of the amount of energy and diligence
Right.
that goes into the preparation of the work product that we put out.
Right.
And that also will be important, and I may need to try to get you to tweak some of your statistics for the purpose of the report to SHPO.
You know,
So I may be in touch with you about it.
it's getting, when I first started this, we weren't doing that much, and it's getting mind-boggling now. I think we may need a computer versus, but, right, it takes a lot of mental energy to sort through it, because I look at my numbers and, have to double check them. I set it aside 2 or 3 times because it's difficult.
Right.
But I wanted to clarify for the 45, that's 45 property visits. But if Vicki and I went, I just counted 1. I know when you both go, there are 2, but I counted that as 1 because I didn't make special notes if just Stephanie went or if Stephanie and Bill went together. So I just know that you made a site visit. So anyways, but that's the one. And the other one, I had questions, and I will send this sheet separately, were easements from CPF, and I did get some information from Julie clarifying all the ones that were in progress are no longer, except the ones that we are pretty much aware of that are happening, like Dick's windmill, they have a type of thing going, and the West Hampton PAC have a type of thing going with the CPF. And then we have a couple more recent ones that you're following down your way. But all the ones prior to that are no longer viable that I'm aware of. But I'll send that separately.
Okay.
But Julie, thank you. She looked it all up and clarified that for us. So.
Yeah, there was just 2, I think, on the list.
What's that?
There was only 2 on that list that CPF has awarded anything with historic
Right.
facade easement.
Right, well, that's it. I know that we, Madhu, which wasn't a local landmark, but it was through Sagaponic, we reviewed that one. We, trying to think, the Rayner Topping House, of course, and then in Hampton Bays, the Nathan Penny House, the Wakeman House, those 3 have been awarded.
Right.
And I know Sag Harbor Cinema did something, but I didn't include that, even though it's probably on the town side, because that was done totally, we weren't involved in that at all.
Right.
So,
I do want to also just recognize something that you've done, which not everybody might realize, but, and you probably are still doing it, but you've documented a lot of the town landmarks with your own photography. And if you go to the town's website, looking at the historic landmarks, your photos are there, thankfully, because they're utilized in different ways, or can be utilized in different ways. And town doesn't have an official program. You are the official documenter of town landmarks, including finding sometimes the historic photographs that
well,
were
it
associated
started
with
with,
them.
I wanted to put 1 photograph of each of the then 15 landmarks on the website, and then GIS, Well, anyways, they had this map idea, and then, I made it a lot of places and took a lot of photographs, and then through the years, I would keep adding them there.
All right, well, the town certainly does and should appreciate the effort that you put in, because otherwise, that evidence and documentation would not be there. So, anyway, thank you.
Okay, then. And I'll just say with the town, if you go to the town website, of course, GIS has some of their own photographs, and it really did help with the barn, because whenever they were in the process of doing, because we didn't get that application, the one for 675 Flying Point, but they did take a few interior pictures as that was being done, so it gave you more of a sense of what had just trying to figure out what had happened with the barn and how much was there, but that helped.
Right.
I appreciate the ones that the town GIS has too, so.
Okay, is there anything else that we should have before the board meeting? If not, meeting is adjourned at 8:46 PM.